G'day guys and welcome back to your English Aussie. I've got a cracking video for you today where we talk through the double game weeks and blank game weeks, the fixture schedule for the rest of the season and why that makes one clear best chip strategy important to go for. I'll be talking through Wildcard 32 analysis, who the best players are, and my Wildcard 32 team. So strap on your boots and let's dive straight into the video. The FA Cup quarterfinals are done. This is the latest fixture schedule and planner to help you with a wildcard 32 or other wildcards that you are planning. I do still think the best strategy is wildcard 32, bench boost 33, and free hit 34, and I'm going to explain to you right now why that is. Looking at the fixture schedules going forwards, you can obviously see here that 6 teams are now doubling in game week 33. That is Brighton, Bournemouth, Burnley, Chelsea, Leeds, and Manchester City. You are able to get 15 double game weekers for game week 33, where you will be able to bench boost and have 30 matches that you will be scoring points for in that game week. You will then be able to free hit in 34 to whatever team you would like. Notably that if Leeds or Chelsea win their match in the FA Cup semi-final against each other, if Leeds win, Leeds will double in game week 36 and Brighton will also double in game week 36 again. If Chelsea win, they will double in game week 36 most likely, and Tottenham will also double alongside them in game week 36. There is a potential that these do shuffle into 34 or 35 midweek where the doubles could be. However, that is unlikely due to Europa League and Champions League fixtures. If Manchester City do beat Southampton and reach the FA Cup final, their match with Bournemouth in game week 37 will need to be rearranged. Now, the only midweeks that might be possible, therefore, would be game week 36 and game week 37, if we're assuming TV rights will affect 34 and 35. Now, Manchester City do also have another rearranged match to play against Crystal Palace. Now, Crystal Palace have Fiorentina in the Conference League. If they do manage to get through this round against Fiorentina, and I will be at Selhurst Park for this match, keeping you updated live from Selhurst. Palace will also play midweek in game week 34 and game week 35, meaning the only possible weeks for Palace to play Manchester City would be midweek 36 or midweek 37. That means that Manchester City more than likely will not have another blank game week after game week 34. If their Bournemouth game does get rearranged, it will either be midweek game week 36, meaning Palace will be midweek 37, or they will play midweek the 37 for the Bournemouth game, meaning there will not be a blank game week in game week 37 for Manchester City. Now, this is important in terms of your wildcard planning, and let me explain that to you guys. If you're going to go with 15 doublers in game week 33, let's say you go for 3 for Brighton, 3 for Bournemouth, 3 for Manchester City, 3 for Chelsea, and 3 for Leeds. If Leeds or Chelsea go through, you will have 3 doublers in game week 36 for one of their 2 teams. If Manchester City also go through, you'll have another 3 doublers in game week 36. You'll have an additional 6 double game weekers in that game week 36, which will be really beneficial to your team. If Leeds manage to beat Chelsea, Brighton will also double again in game week 36. That means Brighton are going to get the double in 33 with your 3 Brighton players and also game week 36. That makes 3 Brighton players essential on a wild card in game week 32. That would mean you could have potentially 9 doublers in game week 36 to play. That does therefore mean that Brighton would blank in 37 and either a Chelsea or a Leeds would blank in 37 if they got through to that round. If Leeds went through, Brighton blanked, and Leeds blanked, you would have 6 blankers in game week 37. And that's why it's so important that Manchester City will not be blanking in game week 37. As with 6 blankers, you will be able to use 2 free transfers to have a full playing 11 in game week 37. And this, for me, really highlights why that wildcard 32, bench boost 33 with 15 fixtures, and then free hit 34 is still the optimal way to go. You're going to get the most fixtures in there. And I think from an expected points point of view, from the number of fixtures, it is just the optimal chip strategy still to go for me. I'm going to take you through now what are the best players, what my wildcard team looks like, and why it's looking like that. Hopefully that all made sense to you. Feel free to take a screenshot of this. I've also posted it on my Twitter. You can see down below here on the bottom right of the screen. You can see the Twitter account. I will often give updates there for the updated fixture schedules for your wildcard planning, etc. I'll post them as soon as results happen. So give me a follow there at TEA_FPL. Moving on then to what my wildcard team looks like. And one final thing to talk about here, and what I think is really important, is the goalkeeper position. Given that Leeds are playing Chelsea in that FA Cup semi-final, one of them will be making it to game week, to the FA Cup final. So one of those teams will likely be doubling in 36 and blanking in 37. Therefore, having that rotation of a Darlow or a Sanchez or a Verbruggen, who will be the doublers if Leeds make it through, and a Sanchez are good combinations. For me, I think Verbruggen and Sanchez is the perfect combination, given one of these guys will be doubling in 36 and the other one will have a fixture in 37 to rotate. Darlow and Sanchez, for me, does also work, but after Perry's great performance for Leeds in the FA Cup quarterfinals, I'd avoid Darlow just in case Leeds decide to mix stuff up with the goalkeeper. I think Perry put in a really nice performance and could be someone that could come in for Leeds. So I've done a little bit of analysis for the rest of the players here. We'll talk through the defenders first, and then I'll show the midfielders, the forwards, and then I'll show my wildcard team, which I think is the optimal team for game week 32. There's a couple of differentials which we can also discuss. In the defenders side of things, this are the 4.5 million defenders. Feel free to take a screenshot of this. Keep this for your own. I do also have the 4.5 million plus defenders in here as well. We'll go on to next. But while you are here, guys, feel free to smash that like button, subscribe down below to the channel if you do enjoy this video. It does obviously really help my channel. If you don't want to, enjoy the video regardless. So right at the top here, we've got a bunch of Leeds defenders. Rodon, Struijk, Justin. Then you've got bit more minutes risk in Bogle, Bijol, and a little bit for Goodmanson. Obviously, Rodon, if you were watching the FA Cup quarterfinals, which it seems like a lot of content creators weren't, did pick up a slight injury, twisted ankle, sprained ankle, rolled ankle. We don't know how significant it is going to be yet. Waiting to see from Daniel Farke a little bit later whether they're going to give us an update on him, whether he's going to be okay for game week 32. For me, he would have been the number one pick given his minutes, his availability, and his stats here. However, now with this injury problem, I would be looking at Struijk for the number one pick. He looks like he is nailed for minutes, especially if Rodon is struggling. He has quite good defensive contribution per 90 stats, as you can see here, at 9.26, and obviously nailed for those minutes. So he could pick up those extra 2 points for you in those double game weeks, which is obviously very important. And I think the next best for Leeds for me is going to be James Justin in there. 3.9 million, 1 goal, 1 assist so far. He's pretty nailed on at the moment as a starter for Leeds since he's come into the team midway through the season. Those are my two favourite Leeds assets for me. Obviously, you got to understand Jayden Bogle does push forward into that right wing role for Leeds every now and again. That's why you can see 1 goal and 3 assists for him. However, he does rotate in and out of the side when Goodmanson's in. Maybe Justin plays right wing back, Goodmanson left wing back, and potentially Bogle does miss out if he doesn't play in that midfield. So there is a chance for a little bit of rotation. He could be a differential pick for you. I'm not saying he's not a good option, but as the sort of minutes risk, I'm looking for the security in minutes for those Leeds defenders, and therefore I'd be looking at Strike and James Justin there. Other defenders that we can talk about in this price point, Ferdy Kadioglu of Brighton. Him and Van Heck are probably going to be the two for Brighton that we are looking at. Lewis Dunk, obviously, having been suspended for the next few weeks, so won't be in that starting lineup. We'll go on to see Van Heck's stats a little bit later. I see Kadioglu as a little bit of a differential pick for Brighton if you want to go against what a lot of the wildcarders have. He's playing at fullback, does get quite far forward every now and again. I think he's pretty nailed on to start for Brighton for the next few weeks. 27 starts so far this season. So he is an interesting pick that you might want to go for if you don't like the Van Heck pick. Or if you're not going for Verbruggen in goal and you are looking for a Darlow and Sanchez move, maybe you want to go for 2 Brighton defenders instead. But yeah, I think between Kadioglu and Van Heck are the picks for me. The other one on this list for Fana at Chelsea, with Chalobah being out injured, I'm thinking Fofana starts every week for them. I think there is still a slight minutes risk and potential rotation in here. Obviously, Badiashile coming back from injury for Chelsea as well. You've got Tosin in there. So there are some potential for other movements. Personally, I think Fofana starts all of those games. I think he's good for defensive contributions for 90 as well there, 11.18, 4.4 million. I think is a nice pick if you are looking for a Chelsea defender and perhaps you aren't going for Sanchez in goal like I suggested. Into the 4.5 million defenders then, as we were discussing, obviously Van Heck of Brighton is in there. Outside of that, I think Nico O'Reilly is pretty much a locked-in pick for everybody for Manchester City. The discussion really is between O'Reilly and Gahey. Obviously, a lot of Gahey's points came when he was playing for Crystal Palace in that 3. He was the one who drove a little bit higher with the ball, put those crosses in, picked up those assists, picked up those goals, was great for DEFCON, was great for bonus, was picking up a majority of the points at that Palace side. At Manchester City, I just don't think he carries that same threat, and I think Nico O'Reilly, often playing on the left wing for City, just carries a whole lot more threat for me, a lot of goal threat, and has that clean sheet threat. So for me, I think he is a lock in any wildcard side. Senesi up here as one of my Bournemouth picks. I think it's really difficult to pick, especially Bournemouth attackers, given that they have Arsenal in game week 32. Newcastle and Leeds in game week 33. I think there's justification for 1 or 2 Bournemouth attackers there. That could be a good fixture. But then you do have a Crystal Palace in game week 35. Nice fixture for the defence. Fulham in 36. Again, could be a reasonable fixture. So I do think Senesi here is quite nice. Alongside Hill, who we saw on the last page. Both good for defensive contributions per 90. And definitely interesting picks for those 3 Bournemouth spots. I think the fact that they do give you such a good high bar for those defensive contributions, they could easily pick up a 4-pointer and a 4-pointer back-to-back, getting you 8 points. If they can get a clean sheet in there, even better. You're getting 12 plus points from a defender for that double game week. I think that's really important and something to really consider for this double game week bench boost is those defensive contribution points. Marco Cucurella's one I've got in there. I do think he's a massive minutes risk for Chelsea. I think he's only started 2 of the last 4 games for them. But one, if you are looking for a bit of a differential pick, that he might be nice for a potential goal threat. Reece James, again, injury issues at the moment with his hamstrings. Why I've not highlighted him here. I just think he's not going to be playing back-to-back matches in a double for Chelsea when they have such a big run of fixtures coming up. They will likely look to play him in the cup, I think, and will miss one of those doubles in game week 33. That's the back line. I'll show on my wildcard team in a second who I've gone for. We'll just move on to the midfielders here. These are the cheap midfielders. Feel free again to take a screenshot, have a look at this. We then do go on to the 5.5 plus million midfielders, what we can discuss after. Just running through these guys then. At the top, we've obviously got Antoine Stack. Again, if you were watching the FA Cup, he came off with an injury there, took a knock, limped off, potentially a ligament issue, which is what Farke said after the game. So a bit of a worry for Antoine Stack. The other Leeds options in here, Aronson and also Ampadu. Now, I think this is sort of a risk tolerance thing for me. I think if Stack is confirmed to be out and for a while, I think that, again, Aronson obviously playing a slightly different position, but maybe for me increases the potential for his minutes to be elongated. He is not a 90 minutes man. He does get substituted every game. He generally tends to start all of those games, but has come off at 45 minutes, at 60 minutes, 70 minutes, 80 minutes. So he is someone that's probably not going to play the full 180 in that double game week. However, does play as a winger, attacking midfielder for Leeds. So does have that upside potential of goals. And then you do have Ethan Ampadu in there at 4.9. Defensive contributions, 12.22 per 90. He's someone that you're looking at in that sort of Elliot Anderson role of maybe a 4-pointer for the both game weeks. Pick you up your 8 points. Low ceiling, a high floor for me. I think it's between those two unless we hear back about Stack's injury beforehand. He would have been my first choice pick actually for Leeds. Having spoken to some Leeds fans, they do think he has the highest ceiling. However, with this being an injury risk, we'll have to wait and see again from Daniel Farke, similarly as to Rodon, whether he's going to be fit and raring to go running into game week 32 and a double in game week 33. Now, here is one of the only Burnley players that I have talked about here, and that is Anthony of Burnley. If you are looking for a Burnley player, I think he's probably one of the only ones I would be looking at with some potential. But for me, I still probably in a void. I just don't think they score enough goals. I don't think they carry enough attacking threat to be picking one of their players here. Underneath this is Diego Gomez of Brighton. Now, I think this is a really wonderful pick. Very attacking, nailed for minutes. The only downside of Diego Gomez is he is on 9 yellow cards. If he does pick up a yellow in game week 32, he will be banned for 2 game weeks and miss both of the double. So that is an issue. I think it's worth taking the risk for me. Obviously, 5 goals, 1 assist, 23 starts. Does create opportunities for Brighton. He knows he's on 9 yellows. Knows not to pick one up in game week 32. If he doesn't, he'll be fine for game week 33 double header. That's the less than 5.4 million midfield. There's actually quite a few to talk about in that line. And then now we do go on to the more expensive midfielders. Top of the list, Antoine Semenyo. I don't think it's really much to talk about there. Unless you're going for a super differential like a Foden or a Cherky in that Manchester City midfield. I think Semenyo is just the best pick, nailed for minutes. And has been a real threat for them, often playing as a second striker role up there with Erling Haaland. Down below that, Enzo obviously has been banned for 2 games. Internal disciplinary issue with Chelsea. He did miss Port Vale, and he will miss game week 32 against Manchester City. Will he be brought back into the team from game week 33? Will he be left on the sidelines given that disciplinary issue? We'll have to wait and see, but for me, that does mean I will probably leave him out of my side. He is a bit of a differential, though, so if you do think he comes straight back into that Chelsea side, he obviously is a key cog in that side and could easily come straight back in. You could go for him as a bit of a differential in that Chelsea midfield. Neto as well, I would say a little bit more of a minutes risk for me, but again, it's probably one of those differential picks in the midfield that could pay off quite substantially. And then Cole Palmer, I think probably the most safe pick for Chelsea. Obviously on penalties, that's why his expected goal involvements are quite high here. That does include penalty involvements. but obviously 9 goals, 2 assists, only in 18 starts. I think he's still someone that you probably want to have for a double game week. Manchester United and Brighton definitely could be goals for Cole in both of those games. Okafor, probably one we didn't chat about in that lead section. Again, I think is a nice bit of a differential pick, but again, could be a minutes risk for me in that lead side. But definitely someone I like, think's a good player, and could be a nice differential if you want to go for him. Mitoma, another one, again, similar minutes risk for me for Brighton. Pascal Gross is one that I think's absolutely nailed for 90 minutes every week. He is not going to be on penalties, though. Danny Welbeck most likely on penalties for Brighton, even with Gross on the pitch. So for me, there's not a lot of attacking threat there. But again, it could be a little bit of a differential pick for you, and one to maybe go for if you don't like Diego Gomez and you are worried about his 9 yellow cards. And finally, Ryan in there at Bournemouth. Again, another one that I think is a nice little bit of a differential pick. If you don't want to go for perhaps a Tavernier, which I think a lot of people maybe are looking at, maybe Ryan is here as sort of your next best option in that Bournemouth midfield. Finally, moving on to the forwards, we've got them all in one list here, and I think you've only got that top 6 that are relevant. I don't like the Burnley strikers. Nemecha, again, with a bit of a minus risk for me for Leeds. So, looking at these top guys, I think Erling Haaland's obviously a must for Manchester City. After his hat-trick against Liverpool, just tore them apart. He could be back in form and trying to lead Manchester City on that title charge. João Pedro's an interesting one for Chelsea. I think he's good, great minutes. Obviously, a guy who scored 14, 9 assists, did a little bit of both. I think should be pretty nailed in that side. Then the discussion is Calvert-Lewin versus Danny Welbeck. Which one do you fancy? Which one do you want to go for? Do you want to go for 2 leads in the defence midfield? Or are you looking to go for 1-1-1 and Dominic Calvert-Lewin up top? You have the other option of going for a Bournemouth attacker. Evan Nilsson and Krupi, both big minutes risk for me. They do tend to rotate minutes quite a lot and are unlikely to be playing back-to-back in the double. So for me, I would be avoiding those guys. My pick here, as you'll see, is going to be a Danny Welbeck, just because I think he is on pens for Brighton as well. And despite Calvert-Lewin scoring in the FA Cup penalties, probably a slightly better penalty taker than DCL. Moving on then to what my wildcard team is and why. This is my wildcard team. Feel free to pause, have a look here. I will talk about why I've gone for everybody. I guess we've spoken a little bit about it. And I think there are some alternate options as well that you could be going for here. I think, obviously, for game week 33 and for the doubles, you want to have these 15 playing doublers. I think at the back, I've gone for that Verbruggen Sanchez goalkeeper combination, as we discussed, because one of them will also double in 36 and the other one will play in 37. So I don't have to make a goalkeeper transfer in 37 for that issue. At the back, I've gone with Struijk and Justin for now, just given we don't have any news on Rodon. I think they're the most nailed 4 minutes for Leeds. I've obviously also gone Danny Welbeck over Don Calvert-Lewin, which has made me go into that. Perhaps if you'd have gone the other way around, you could have gone for a Van Heck over a Struijk or a Justin. I'd probably go over a Justin. And then a DCL over Danny Welbeck. That would be the sort of switch that I'd be looking at if you were to go that direction. I think Senesi and Hill, for me, are pretty much locks on this wild card, just given the defensive contribution potential for them. And I think they potentially could pick up a defensive contribution against Arsenal in game week 32, who obviously are not free-flowing in their attack so far this year. Nico O'Reilly, as we mentioned, a lock for Man City due to his positioning. Then into the midfield, Semenyo, I think, again, a must-have. Ethan Ampadu, I have gone for the boring option here. I really do think this could be an Aronson, could be a stack. I'm not sure 100% that this is the best option in that Leeds midfield, though I do think he might just pick up a 4-pointer and a 4-pointer and pick me up the 8 points. A little bit of a boring option. Maybe you guys are a bit more exciting than me. Maybe I'll get a bit more exciting as we get towards the end of the deadline and I'm looking to jump rank huge from my 14k rank at the moment. Diego Gomez, I think, is a really nice pick. I like him. I'm not worried about the 9 yellow cards. I think his attacking threat definitely outweighs that. If I do have to make a transfer, maybe I will make that in 33 if he gets suspended. I think Burnley a really nice fixture as well in 32 for him. Cole Palmer, just so much attacking upside for me. It's hard to leave out of the team. And then finally, Marcus Tavernier, who I've gone for Bournemouth to round out the 3 Bournemouth players. What I do think you can do is leave Tavernier out in game week 32, potentially have a Bruno Fernandes or whoever you think is going to be the highest scoring midfielder for game week 32. There's plenty of space in this wildcard team for an upgrade, probably almost enough for a Mo Salah, maybe 0.4 million out for a Mo Salah. But you could go for a Bruno and a Mbumo, anybody really, in game week 32 and use a free transfer in 33 to bring in Tavernier. Obviously a little bit risky if you do go with Diego Gomez in case he does pick up a yellow card there, and you never know what issues could crop up in game week 33. I've obviously rolled a couple of transfers forward, so in game week 33 I am going to have 2 free transfers. But I will be bringing Tavernier straight back in for that game week 33 if that did happen. So that's one you can play around with. Perhaps hang on to Bruno. I think he could have a really good week in 32. I think likely I will have Bruno in that game week 32 team, and this is what mine will look like. I'll use the transfer in 33 to bring him back. And up top, I have gone for Danny Welbeck on pens for Brighton, Erling Haaland and João Pedro. I think those are the 3 best strikers to be having, and I really like that looking at game week 32. If we do go onwards, obviously this will be bench boost in 33, free hit 34. Looking at that game week 35 team, currently how I'm looking is to actually bring Bruno Fernandes back in game week 35 again. Then in game week 36, potentially if Palace are playing against Manchester City and they will be doubling, using my 2 free transfers to bring in Munoz and Sarr. And then in game week 37, obviously Manchester City and Palace will not be blanking. Perhaps the blankers will be a Brighton if Leeds do get through. Then I may have to use a transfer to take out a Diego Gomez or a Danny Welbeck or a Pascal Struijk. If Chelsea do obviously make it through over Leeds, that does mean I probably don't need to make any transfers in that game week 37, and I can just put my Chelsea players on the bench there. So that does sort of work all the way through here. I have brought in Malik Thior as my 1 free transfer in that game week 37. You can see how I've structured this team, how I think this works all the way through to game week 37, manage that blank, and then you maybe take a little bit of a punt at 38 and see how it goes. If you do have the triple captain, I'd probably recommend saving it to game week 36 as well. That about rounds out what I want to discuss. Hopefully that was really helpful for you guys. I really do think this is the optimal strategy. If you do have any questions, any suggestions, any thoughts on your team, drop them down below in the comments. If you think this team is an absolute shambles, I've lost my brain and I need surgery myself, let me know below in the comments. Maybe you'll help me change my mind and go for a better way of thinking. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you have done, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you want, or don't. Have a fantastic game week, guys. This has been your English Aussie, and I will catch you guys later.